They say motherhood changes you, but being a stepmom is a whole different storm. You're expected to love a child who's not yours, guide him, protect him, even when the lines get blurry. I never thought one quiet night would shake the ground under my feet. It started like any other evening. The house was peaceful. My husband had left for a night shift, and I was alone, folding laundry with a glass of wine and soft music humming in the background. I felt calm, normal even. Like I finally had things under control. I passed by my stepson's room and noticed the faint glow under his door. It was already late, way past bedtime. I smiled to myself, assuming he was watching some silly YouTube videos or playing a game. Harmless stuff. I knocked gently and pushed the door open. The moment I stepped in, time stopped. My heart dropped into my stomach. The screen in front of him wasn't showing games. It was dark, graphic, wrong. He didn't notice me right away. He was too fixated on the screen until I whispered his name. He jumped and slammed the laptop shut. I stood there, frozen. My hands were trembling, and my thoughts raced a mile a minute. What had I just seen? And more importantly, why was he watching it? My stepson, just 12 years old, had just opened a door I wasn't ready for. I stood there in stunned silence, every instinct in me battling between rage and heartbreak. My stepson, this sweet, shy boy who still held my hand when he was scared, was watching something so disturbing, so inappropriate I couldn't even find the words. He sat frozen on the bed, shoulders hunched, not daring to meet my eyes. The glow from the screen had vanished, but the shadows it cast lingered in the room. I could still hear faint echoes of the audio playing in my memory, taunting me like a ghost I couldn't unsee. "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, choked with disbelief. He didn't answer, just stared at his hands like they held all the guilt in the world. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake him, but I didn't. I sat beside him instead, my heart pounding. "Where did you find that video?" I asked gently, trying not to sound angry. He finally looked up at me, his eyes red, lips trembling. "It popped up on a game ad." Then I got curious, he said. His voice was small, scared. My heart broke right there. Curiosity, of course. At his age, the internet is a minefield of things kids should never see. But this wasn't just a video. It was violent, twisted something that could warp how a child sees the world. I had to tread carefully. One wrong reaction could push him away. "Okay," I said softly. "You're not in trouble, but we need to talk about what you saw and why it's not okay." He nodded slowly, eyes down again. I could tell he didn't even fully understand what he'd watched, only that it felt wrong, and now he was ashamed. I wanted to protect him from everything, but in that moment, I realized I'd been too late. The internet had already gotten to him, and I was left sitting in the wreckage of his innocence, trying to figure out how to put the pieces back together. That night, after he finally fell asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen still, silent, with my hands wrapped tightly around a cold cup of tea I never drank. My thoughts wouldn't stop racing. I kept seeing the look in his eyes, guilt, fear, confusion all at once. How long had this been going on? Was it the first time? Was there more I didn't know? The questions piled up in my head like a dam ready to burst. I felt responsible, like I had failed him somehow, like I should have seen the signs sooner, asked more questions. I remembered how distant he'd been lately, how he avoided eye contact when I brought up school, how he always kept his door just barely cracked. I thought he was just growing up. But now I saw it differently. Something was shifting, and I had missed it. I debated waking my husband. He deserved to know. But I hesitated. He was always harder on his son than I was, stricter, colder. If I told him now, in the middle of the night, he'd storm in there like a hammer. no softness. And that could make everything worse. So instead, I took a deep breath and opened the laptop. I had to see for myself what had scarred my stepson's mind. And as much as I wanted to shut it again the moment the images loaded, I didn't. I forced myself to watch. Not to judge, but to understand. It was darker than I expected. Not just explicit violent, aggressive. No context, no emotion. Just control, domination, and silence. And in that silence, I heard something else. A warning. This wasn't just about what he saw. It was about what it might teach him. I shut the screen, heart aching, and whispered to myself, "He's just a boy." But the world didn't care. It had already begun shaping him. Now it was my turn to fight back, not with anger, but with presence, with words, with love, even when it hurt. And so I made a promise to myself right then. I would not let this define him. I would not let silence raise my stepson. He would hear the truth from someone who cared, who saw him, who refused to give up, even when the world tried to take him away from me. The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. I sat across from my husband at the kitchen table, staring into my untouched coffee. He noticed something was off right away. "You didn't sleep," he said. I just nodded. How could I explain what I had seen? "I walked in on your son last night," I finally said. My voice cracked. He set down his mug slowly, eyes narrowing, not with suspicion, but concern. "What happened?" he asked. And so I told him. Every word felt like pulling thorns out of my throat. I told him about the video, about the fear in our boy's eyes, about the shame, about how he shut the laptop like it was on fire. My husband's face changed with every sentence: shock, confusion, then anger. Not at me, at the situation, at himself. He rubbed his hands over his face. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Then he looked at me, eyes red. "Do you think someone showed it to him? Or God, do we need to worry about who he's been talking to online?" I could see panic creeping into his voice. "We don't know yet," I said calmly. "But we can't just come down on him like a hammer. He needs to feel safe enough to talk to us. If we make this a war, he'll go quiet and the silence will teach him worse things than the video ever could." He nodded, slowly. The tension in his shoulders loosened just a bit. "You're right," he said. I didn't think this would happen. Not to him. He's just a kid." And that's when it hit both of us. The world wasn't waiting for him to grow up. It had already started teaching him through pixels, whispers, and clicks. So we made a pact right there, in that quiet kitchen. No secrets, no shame, no yelling. Just honesty and presence, and showing up even when it's uncomfortable. Because love isn't just hugs and birthdays. It's these moments, the hard ones. The ones where you have to choose whether to run away or lean in. And we both chose to lean in, together, for him. For the boy who needed us most. Later that day, after school, I sat him down on the couch. No distractions, no scolding. Just me and him, and a silence that felt thick enough to cut with a knife. He looked nervous, fidgeting with the sleeves of his hoodie, eyes darting everywhere but mine.
"Hey," I said gently, "we don't have to pretend like nothing happened. I know what I saw, but I also know you're not a bad kid. You're curious, and the world is throwing things at you faster than you can understand them. That's not your fault."
He blinked fast, like he was holding back tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to. I didn't think it was going to be like that. It just came up." And then I kept looking. I nodded, not to excuse it, but to let him know I was listening. Really listening. "I get it," I said. "It's okay to be curious, but what you saw, that wasn't love. That wasn't real connection. It was acting twisted, violent acting made for shock, not truth. And if that's your first lesson about intimacy, it can mess things up badly. He looked up at me, finally, and his voice cracked. Does that make me gross? My heart broke all over again. No, baby, I said, reaching out to hold his hand. It makes you human. What matters now is how we move forward, what we teach you next. I don't want to see stuff like that again, he mumbled. It made me feel sick after. I nodded, squeezing his hand. That's your gut telling you the truth. You can always come to me. With questions, with confusion, anything. No shame, no punishment. He leaned against me, then his head on my shoulder, like he used to do when he was little. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just helped him avoid a path full of darkness. I had reminded him he wasn't alone, that he still had a guide. And maybe that's what parenting really is, not control, not perfection. Just showing up over and over again and saying, I'm here, I see you, and I'll walk beside you, even when the path gets messy. That night, I stood in the hallway for a long time. His door was closed, but I could hear the gentle rhythm of his breathing. He was asleep, peaceful, like the weight of the day had been lifted, even if just a little. And in my heart, I knew everything had changed. I thought about how easy it would have been to yell, to punish, to make it all about rules. But we didn't. We chose to listen, to stay. And that choice, the harder one, built something stronger. Not fear, not silence, but trust. And trust is what saves kids. At dinner, he was quiet, pushing food around his plate. But then he asked me, "Can we talk again sometime?" My eyes welled up. Anytime, I told him, and I meant it. That door would never be closed. Not to him. Not now. Not ever. We added new filters on the Wi-Fi. Yes. But more importantly, we added conversations. We started asking about his world, his thoughts, what he was curious about. Not to control him, but to connect. Because kids don't just need protection. They need understanding. I knew more hard moments would come, that the world wouldn't stop trying to teach him before we had the chance. But now, he knew where to come when he felt lost. And I knew I had the strength to face it with him. Even the darkest, most uncomfortable parts. I wasn't ready for what my stepson was watching. No parent ever really is. But I was ready for what he needed after the screen went dark. He didn't need more fear. He didn't need shame. He needed someone to hold space for his confusion, to stay when it would have been easier to walk away. Then that's what I chose. I chose to stay, to look him in the eye and say, "You are not broken, you are growing, and I will grow with you." Because love isn't about control. It's about courage. And when the world tries to raise our children for us, we fight back by showing up. Every single time. If this story touched you, even just a little, let me know in the comments. What would you have done in my place? And tell me, what kind of story do you want to hear next? Something real, something raw, something that stays with you. I'm listening, always.